Anyway, you were saying, Chris.
I was?
I think you wanted to talk about the retiree protest.
Oh, we talked to that. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is, gosh, I mean, I feel like the CCP is like beset on all sides by crises all over the place. And like this was another one, like I'm now not sure compared to when this episode will come out, but there was...
Last week and 2 weeks ago.
Okay, last week and 2 weeks ago. There was like a massive protest in Wuhan of about 10,000 retirees protesting healthcare reforms that were supposed to solve some of the horrible corruption problems that were a part of China's state-run healthcare system. But it ended up slashing people's healthcare benefits, although not for like civil servants and certain well-connected people. Like it seems like the reforms didn't affect them.
I mean, they always go for the retirees, I think, in a certain way. Like there's been a problem for many years where Chinese veterans have protested so many times because their benefits keep getting slashed, or they don't get, they're basically being abandoned.
And this is a real crisis for the Chinese Communist Party because it has an aging population. I think by 2035, it's supposed to be a third of the population will be over the age of 60. And if there's, if the government can't provide health care in the system where the government says it can provide everything, that's going to make a lot of people upset.
Yeah, and the thing is, you don't want to upset people who are retired because they have time to come out and protest. And also they're old and they have a lot less to lose than young people.
That's true too.
That's true too. And like a lot of this current elderly generation, they were Red Guards back in the day. They know about using extreme acts of violence against class enemies or people they don't like.
Yeah. I mean, even if they weren't Red Guards, they were there for the Cultural Revolution. They saw how it went down. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm terrified of elderly people in general. So. I can see why this is a scary thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, really, it's just about me, reflecting upon my own mortality.
Oh, okay. I thought you were just thinking that elderly people were fierce. Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, those, the square dancing.
The damas. The Chinese
they are
aunties.
horrifying.
They are. Like, you always hear these stories about, like, neighborhoods who are really fed up with, like, they're kind of like these Chinese, like, older women who are in their 50s and 60s who like to dance in these public squares for exercise. So imagine, like, doing a Zumba class or something, but it's just, like, in the middle of a public square with, like, blaring music at all hours. Sometimes you actually see them in Chinatown. Like I was in Flushing a couple weeks ago, and like it was like twilight, and they had come out to do like a square dance.
Twilight as in night, or like the movie?
No, as in night.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there will be.
Just checking.
They weren't vampires, right?
That we know of.
Their skins were glittering.
But anyway, so there are often these conflicts between these like women who are coming out to do square dancing and like the neighborhood people who are like, I can't take the music anymore.
I don't want this at 5 a.m.
And like they try to block the square or something, and like the women just like push it all out of the way. Like they're you don't want to mess with them.
I remember seeing a video of like these older women like basically quasi lifting up a car and like moving it out of the way so they could make space to dance.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing.
Yeah. So these are people you don't want on your bad side.
Now I'm imagining all of these damas like flipping over cars so they can get their medical benefits.
Yeah. I mean, it's a real risk. There was back in January, I believe, of this year, there was a similar retiree protest in Guangzhou. Mm-hmm. Then after this big 10,000 people protest 2 weeks ago, a week later, there was another protest where still thousands of retirees came out to continue to protest about this.
Right. And I think that the problem here is like the CCP can't really fix the medical system in a way that's going to make people happy, because there's a lot of reasons for that, but because they can't fix it, it also means there's no way to really resolve the protests except by cracking down harder on the protests.
Like even though they were elderly people, the police were sent in.
Yeah. And so, I mean, some of the reasons why the healthcare system was in trouble is because, like, when you have more elderly people to take care of and fewer portion of the population working, you have less income to then pay out benefits. But also, the CCP spent a lot of money in local. I mean, most of the healthcare is funded by local cities or counties, and so those counties had spent huge amounts of money on following the zero COVID policy because they were forced to, but they weren't getting reimbursed from the central government. And so, like,
They were using health insurance funds.
Right.
Yeah.
So they were running out of money because of zero COVID. They weren't getting reimbursed. They were losing, regular revenue sources because of zero COVID as well. And now they're like, well, we just don't have the money to pay for all the health care.
So what they actually did was they started using the public health care funds that were set aside for like medical benefits and insurance and stuff like that. And how it gets allocated is that people, like, you have like a personal amount of money in your fund that
Right.
you like, but you don't control the money. The money is with the government, but like, this is how much money you're supposed to be able to use for healthcare or whatever. And then the government was starting to, like, the local governments were starting to pull money out of those funds to pay for COVID testing or whatever that they had to do. And so now people were like, what happened to my money? Like, they can't access those funds necessarily.
Wow. A communist government took people's money.
Well,
And this is on top of the fact that, like, over the years, like, most of the country's healthcare funds were going to elderly CCP cadres and family members.
I mean, they're definitely, if you have connections, you can get more benefits than other people,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And you still can, despite the reforms.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
it's not like everything was reformed equally, and also, well-connected party members also have to suffer the same problems.
I mean, the Chinese healthcare system has been broken for many years. Like, there's so many stories of, like, hospitals refusing to admit people without cash because they're like, we're not going to be able to get the money from the government to pay for this. So you have to pay up front before we'll let you into the
Which
ER.
is ironic because that's what people criticize, like, say the healthcare system in the U.S. is like. Like, if you don't have money, you're going to die on the street corner.
Well, I mean, the U.S. healthcare system is broken in a lot of ways.
In a lot of different ways.
Right. But one thing is, if there's an emergency, like, an ambulance will still come and still get you to the hospital and still treat you for that, irrespective of whether you have insurance, and they will save your life and that sort of thing.
You may
and
be
then,
in crippling medical debt afterwards.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, that part is really scary, but it's still worse in China, where, like, you're bleeding from like a stab wound, and you go to the emergency room and they're like, oh, pay us cash now or we won't save your life.
I mean, yeah, and that's not how it is across the board, but in, like, especially in poorer regions,
Right.
like, there's a lot of, like, you got to pay up front.
Right. But it's
stuff.
also
Yeah.
not surprising in a country where there are so many doctors who, like, you might think that that's unethical, right? But it's also a country where doctors are literally killing political and religious prisoners for their organs and doing organ transplants to make money and give the organs to, wealthy people or connected cadres. So in a country that does organ harvesting, I just feel like
in
anything
state-run hospitals
Yeah.
too. So, like,
Yeah,
this is the
military
government.
hospitals, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, like, really, like, not a surprise.
Yeah, I get a little skeeved out when people are like, yeah, there should be socialized health care. Like, the government really should have more control over our health.
Well, because
like,
what
I
we
think of
actually
China.
all want is competence, right? We want healthcare that everyone can have access to in a reasonably affordable way. But the question is, how do you get there? Like, how do you actually get there? Not like
It's not the way that China has done it.
right,
Definitely
and
not.
it's not the way America's doing it either. But it doesn't mean that the alternative, the only good viable alternative, is China's method.
Well, I mean, also we were talking about access. Like, in rural areas, people know that, the rural hospitals don't have the good doctors.
Yeah.
So people will try to get to city hospitals to get treated, right?
And are they able to because of hukou? Like, does hukou affect?
I think you can go to a city hospital, but, like, then the city hospitals become overwhelmed. And, there's just, like, multiple cascading problems with that.
Yeah.
And there's also no primary care system in China, so people are incentivized to go to hospitals first. like part of it is the people don't get reimbursed in the same way
For outpatient services, yeah.
but also like there's just not a system set up where like you have a family doctor kind of thing. So you go to a hospital for everything.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why Chinese medicine is still, it's like that's for many people like the only option. And
You mean like traditional Chinese medicine?
yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Not
also
Chinese medicine, but
also the CCP is trying to use like traditional Chinese medicine as like a propaganda tool.
yeah,
Like they did that with COVID, where they were like, "Oh, this is just as good as other types of treatment."
well, I mean, look at how well it worked in China. They have the lowest death count in the world.
like you couldn't get
It's-
you couldn't get aspirin or Tylenol to like for fever reduction,
Yeah,
but you could get like the Chinese like traditional Chinese medicine that they were pushing that
Yeah.
they said would help COVID. So
Well, and it's technically true. They do have the lowest death count.
that's a good point. They're not technically lying. Wow,
Yeah.
very good, very good.
Oh.
Yeah. All this makes me think we on America Uncovered we should cover like some of Canada's euthanasia laws that are coming out.
I've always been a supporter of youth in Asia.
Amen. Amen.